Hebrews, Hebrews. This is Prophets of Awakening. This reading through the TANAK class, the 6th of December, 2023. We'll be dealing with Leviticus chapter 4 and 5 for our topic for discussion. Okay, you can go to our YouTube channel, the Prophets of Awakening. Check out our videos. We have like 700 videos or so on all different types of topics and discussions. It's a lot of information given, so you can check them out and connect dots for you and bring you to the truth of the Holy Scriptures. If you like what you're hearing and receiving, I'm asking you to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And for those that feel the need to support the channel, go to our Cash App at the bottom of the screen. Okay, this is a non-Messianic channel. And by that I mean we deal with the Tanakh and the Torah. And the Tanakh is the Old Testament, so-called Book of Remembrance. And the Torah is the first 5 books of the Old Testament. They consist of our laws and our statutes, our culture that was given to Moses by the Lord of hosts. Shalom and welcome to the channel, and welcome to our reading through the Tanakh segment. Before we get started, we're going to do our moment of silence, prayer. We're going to do a Psalms, and we'll do some current events. So in order to stay up on what's going on globally around the world, when it pertains to these end times and pertaining to Israel, then we'll open it up for some Q&A and comments and dialogue. So then we go into our topic, which is Leviticus chapter 4 and 5, dealing with the laws. Okay, so this moment of silence is for the Lord of hosts and all that he's doing to bring about our prophesied deliverance in these last days. Okay. O Lord, righteousness and uprightness belongs unto thee. Therefore we come before thee at this hour, seeking thy face, looking for righteousness and uprightness, that we may walk before thee as thy servants David, Solomon, Samuel, Hezekiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel did, that we may walk before thee in truth and in righteousness and in rightness of heart. Give unto us, O Lord, an understanding heart, that we may discern between good and bad. For we desire to walk after thee, O Lord, and to keep your commandments and your testimony and your statutes with all our heart and soul, to perform the words of this covenant that was written down by your prophets. O Lord, allow thy face to shine upon thy people and hear our plea. Hear and do, O Lord. Hide not thy face from us any longer, for the end times are here, and we need you so very much at this hour. Peace be unto you. Okay, so with that being said, we'll read the Psalms. Okay. I'll read Psalm 48. It's God is our God. It's a song for the sons of Korah. Great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised in the city of God, in the mountain of his holiness. Beautiful for situations, the joy of the whole earth is Mount Zion on the sides of the north, the city of the great king. God is known in her palaces for a refuge. Below, the kings were assembled, they passed by together. They saw it, and so they marveled. They were troubled and hasted around. Fear took hold upon them there, and pains as of a woman in travail. Thou breakest the ships of Tarshish with an east wind, as we have heard, so have we seen in the city of the Lord of hosts, in the city of our God. God will establish it forever. Selah. We have thought of thy loving kindness, O God, in the midst of thy temple. According to thy name, O God, so is the praise unto the ends of the earth. By the right hand is full of righteousness. Let Mount Zion rejoice. Let the daughters of Judah be glad because of thy judgments. Walk about Zion and go round about her, tell the towers thereof, mark ye well her bulwarks, consider her palaces, that ye may tell it to the generation following. For this God is our God forever and ever. He will be our guide even unto death. So that was Psalms 48. God is our God. It's a song for the sons of Kukuk. Anybody have comments on that? Okay, so that being said, we're going to our current events. Okay.
It is day 54 of the Israel-Hamas war. More hostages were released, more prisoners were exchanged, families are united, Gazans are breathing a sigh of relief, aid is entering the Gaza Strip. Things seem calmer, at least for now, which means that the truce is holding. But will this temporary truce turn into a permanent ceasefire? It depends on the appetite for war. Israel has plenty of it, it seems. They want to destroy Hamas. The world, on the other hand, not so much. Any war is bad for the world, for the economy, plus wars are costly. Israel is not too worried on that front. Why? Because it has the United States covering its back. America has pledged $14.3 billion in aid for Israel, and there's likely to be more, which is hardly surprising. From 1948 to 2023, America has given Israel $124 billion in aid. That's both military and economic assistance. And that's not all. There's also been extra aid, like $10 billion for the development of the Iron Dome. Since 2004, Washington has been giving Israel $3 billion every year. That's a lot of money. And this makes Israel the largest recipient of US security aid. The US also accounts for 92% of Israeli arms imports, which means without American weapons, Israel cannot sustain itself. Plus, there are subsidies. Israel can buy weapons at subsidized rates. US defense contractors get benefits like steady contracts. So it's a win-win for both. But do you know who's losing out? The American taxpayers. They are the ones footing the bill for all of this, and most of them do not even want to do it. According to a new survey, only 32% Americans say the US should support Israel militarily. 68% say there should be a ceasefire. So there's little appetite for war in America, and it's understandable. Americans are grappling with high inflation. Food prices are up 25% since 2020. Rents are up by 20%. Electricity up by 25% again. And car insurance is up by 33%. Housing is becoming unaffordable. The cost of living crisis is squeezing savings. And credit card debt is soaring. Meanwhile, America's national debt is inching close to the $34 trillion mark, $34 trillion. So Americans feel they can ill afford to pay for another war. And yet, the Biden administration has been sending arms and more to Israel. Since the 7th of October this year, since the attack by Hamas, there have been direct commercial sales, meaning US defense contractors have been selling directly to Israel. Pending orders have been pushed up. Pentagon stockpiles have been redirected to West Asia. Plus, some in the administration have a stake in this. Take US Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, for example. He's a former board member of Raytheon. The company is now known as RTX. It's a military contractor that provides weapons to Israel. Then there is Secretary of State Antony Blinken. In 2017, he co-founded West Exec Advisors. It works for military contractors, startups, and Israeli companies. And Blinken has advised Boeing, according to his financial disclosure. Boeing is supplying weapons to Israel too. So Biden's team was advising military contractors, and now the Biden administration is sending weapons to Israel, weapons that Israel uses to fight this war. And funding all of this are US tax dollars, basically American citizens, some of whom say they did not even sign up for this. So Israel is heavily reliant on the US, which gives the Americans a lot of leverage too. They can force Prime Minister Netanyahu to end the war. A ceasefire is already in place. Will America make a push to make it permanent? The decision will be both political and financial.
Okay, any comments on that?
Shalom, everyone. It just sounds like a well orchestrated plan. You know, they talk behind closed doors and do whatever, you know, and it's all planned out. And if we go back, we know this a part of the prophecy, you know, and they just got their plans in order on what they want to do, how they want to do it. Because it's coming.
Okay.
You can see it happening every day.
Okay. It goes back to what I was saying about the beast and the whore. It's a whore riding the beast. Israel is the whore and America is the beast. At this time, it used to be Britain, France. One time, it was just the beast able to move around. Anybody else? Okay. Got another one right here.
Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso signing a security pact that literally changed things forever. Any country like France or an alliance like NATO or ECOWAS now had to think twice before invading, because it would bring all three African countries into the war. But things did not end there, as the top diplomats of the three African countries met recently. They have planned to form something more powerful than an ordinary alliance, which you will know about in this video. They have decided to suspend the use of CFA franc, launch a new single currency, and take a step further toward becoming a single country. What does that mean in simple words? What Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso have really planned that has changed the power and political landscape of Africa? And what more strategies do they have in mind to unite these three countries? Well, launching a single currency is one of the many steps they have decided on in the meeting, which you will find out shortly. Let's get started.
Matsado knives do stand out from the crowd. The leather.
The trio of Sahelian nations, which include Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, is progressing towards operationalizing the recently conceived initiative known as the Alliance of Sahel States. Just recently, the representatives of the foreign ministers of these states gathered in Bamako, building on a prior meeting by experts over the weekend to define the institutional architecture of the coalition. The Malian government views this mini-summit as a crucial step in strategically implementing the alliance. Foreign ministers from Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger convened in Bamako to give a comprehensive shape to the military coalition among the three countries, officially established on September 16th. According to a statement from Bamako's foreign ministry, ministers Olivia Ragnavna-Wende Rwamba from Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Yakubu from Niger, and their Malian counterpart, Abdoulaye Diop, met to add a political and diplomatic dimension to this alliance. The three parties are actively working on adopting additional protocols, establishing institutional and legal bodies for the alliance, and defining political measures and diplomatic coordination. Originally conceived as a defense pact against rebel or jihadist groups, the Alliance of Sahel States has evolved beyond military cooperation. The three nations now aim to create a genuine economic and political union. The governments of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso have announced their intention to strengthen trade exchanges, jointly carry out energy and industrial projects, establish an investment bank, and more, which you will know about shortly. You should know that this alliance is a response to the suspension of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso from the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, following military coups that installed military juntas hostile to France and Western powers and closely aligned with Russia. In response, the military leaders of Burkina Faso and Niger announced their plans to withdraw from the G5 Sahel force in the Sahel region of Africa. Initially established in 2017 with France's support, the leaders of the 5 countries agreed upon the Joint Anti-Terror Task Force. However, the military rulers of Burkina, Niger, and Mali have accused Paris of exerting undue influence, particularly in the aftermath of French deployments on their territories over the years. In a joint statement, Burkina and Niger declared their decision to withdraw from all aspects of the G5 Sahel, including the joint force. Their discontent with the organization stems from its failure to achieve objectives and bureaucratic hindrances that obstruct the legitimate aspirations of member countries for security and development. The statement conveys that their pursuit of independence and dignity is incompatible with the current form of G5 participation. It emphasizes that the G5 Sahel should not prioritize foreign interests over the welfare of their people, or yield to the dictates of any power undermining their sovereignty. In a separate development, Niger also has granted authorization for the armed forces of Mali and Burkina Faso to enter its territory in case of an attack. The foreign ministers of Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso convened to discuss increased cooperation on security and other joint issues, reaffirming their commitment to mutual support in the face of potential conflicts with ECOWAS. Niger is also under ongoing ECOWAS economic sanctions, against which Niamey has initiated legal proceedings, the decision for which has been postponed. In this context, the formalization of the Alliance of Sahel States seems to be the creation of an alternative to ECOWAS. It's this alliance where some of the most important decisions were made. So before you know about the launch of a single currency, you should know about the 3 countries' plans to form a confederation, a step that is a nightmare for the West. On Friday, the foreign ministers of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, all currently under military rule, put forth a proposal for the establishment of a confederation as part of a broader initiative to unify these West African neighbors within a federation. Mali and Burkina Faso, governed by juntas that took control in 2020 and 2022, respectively, promptly expressed support for Niger's military rulers after they ousted elected President Mohamed Bazoum in July. This collaborative effort resulted in the creation of the Alliance of Sahel States, fostering closer economic bonds and mutual defense assistance in the event of a threat to a member's sovereignty or territorial integrity. In a joint statement following a 2-day meeting in Mali's capital, Bamako, the foreign ministers underscored the significant potential for peace, stability, diplomatic strength, and economic development that a fortified political alliance offers. The ministers, guided by the ambition to ultimately achieve a federation uniting Burkina, Mali, and Niger, recommend the creation of a confederation to the heads of state of the Alliance of Sahel States, the statement said. This means that these 3 countries will become one country, each one being a federating unit. Yes, that's the foundation for creating an alliance that will unite all African countries into one body. Malian Foreign Minister Abdoulaye Diop noted that these conclusions of the meetings would be presented to the heads of state. And further to zero.
The secret to walking 5 miles.
I know 2 CFA francs in 1960 when France introduced its new franc. In 1994, Paris unilaterally decided to review the French franc to CFA franc parity, causing a nightmare for Africans. This decision led to the devaluation of the CFA franc to 50% of its value, with 1 French franc now equaling 0.01 CFA francs. The consequences were devastating, causing a collapse in the purchasing power of millions of households, escalating costs of imports, and skyrocketing prices. To this day, central banks in the region are obsessed with fighting inflation at the cost of investment and economic development. If France can unilaterally devalue the CFA franc and impose its decision on African leaders, these leaders can only proceed with internal devaluation by cutting public spending and allowing prices to rise. That's a systemic exploitation that will continue until CFA franc is suspended. There is no other solution at all. Supporters of the CFA franc argue that it brings stability to the region. However, the region has not prospered, and the single currency between 14 countries has not translated into substantial exchanges between them. Exchanges within the CFA franc zone amount to only 10% in Central Africa and 15% within West Africa, far from the 60% of businesses within the Eurozone.
Okay, comments on that?
Wow, that is so
Africa
bad.
right?
But their alliances looks like, excuse me, again, is all a part of, you know, the prophecy, and they pulling back. They seeing the true France, how they, you know, pretty much demoralized them, you know, and made them devalued. And now that they, you know, they're seeing this and fighting back and want to be able to, you know, take back their country, all of them from France.
Right.
They're trying to suck them out by devaluing everything. They hadn't let up since 1994.
Exactly.
0.1 collapse. That is nothing. And they getting 60% of that, and they're only in West Africa getting 10, and then in Africa 15%. That's nothing. Yep.
Right. You can expect something gonna happen. They're gonna try something in that region to try to divert these people. You can
Right.
bet that some kind of mysterious disease or something coming. Believe that.
Yeah, something is coming, because they see these forces are alliancing themselves together and making their own currency and going to get back to living again per se, you know, before they came and trying to take everything away, you know. But everything is changing, like you're saying. It's coming, because they're not going to want these countries to hold fast and stick to what they got. And these are people who have been through struggle, and they know, you know. So if they gotta wait and hold out, they can hold out. They've been holding out since 1994 when they took that 50 down to 0.1. So, you know, yeah, it's gonna be something. We got to prepare ourselves over here, because that's gonna cause us some. We already in the $1 trillion, like she said, the $1 trillion deficit.
Right. Okay, we got some need to know information right here. This is kind of the reason I'm playing. This is I was telling you about how the prophecy was that Israel was going to get ran out of the land, but they have us. They manipulated us and told us that 70 AD was when the real Israelites left. But I keep showing over and over in these videos how it was. They left way before that, in 143 BC, when Antiochus came. That's when Israel was ran out of the land. Esau came in during that time and stole the land. Started naming themselves by the same name as 12 tribes. And then eventually they were ran out in 70 AD. And the Roman Empire allowed them, Herod's lineage, to have a safe passage to Spain. So a lot of these Edomites went to Spain. So when you look at how everything jumped off in the West, it started in Spain with the Nina and Pina San Marino. Columbus coming to America. That's those are Edomites. 13 colonies, all that, Edomites. So here goes some dark truth that they had told you about that all generated out of Spain.
Africa's history is a story of exploitation, colonization, and the intricate interplay of economic interests. Spain, like other European powers, played a significant role in the African slave trade, and it subsequently sought to establish a colonial presence on the continent. This historical account delves into Spain's participation in the transatlantic slave trade and its colonial ventures in Africa, examining the economic and social consequences of these actions. Also, as a way of supporting the button of the video, share and subscribe to help the channel grow. Your support means a lot to us. Spain's role in the African slave trade. The transatlantic slave trade, one of the darkest chapters in human history, involved the forced transportation of millions of Africans to the Americas, where they endured unimaginable suffering and exploitation. Spain, along with other European nations played a deeply significant role in this heinous enterprise. Spain's involvement in the African slave trade can be traced back to the late 15th century, when the Spanish monarchy, led by King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, funded Christopher Columbus's historic voyage in 1492. While Columbus's initial objective was to discover new trade routes to Asia, he unintentionally set the stage for Spain's direct involvement in the New World, leading to the subsequent demand for African labor. Christopher Columbus's voyages to the Americas marked a pivotal moment in world history. When he reached the islands of the Caribbean, he encountered indigenous peoples, including the Taino and Arawak, who were soon subjected to forced labor. Columbus's expeditions not only opened the door to European colonization of the Americas, but also set a troubling precedent of forced labor and exploitation of indigenous populations. The indigenous populations of the Americas, although initially subjected to forced labor, proved highly vulnerable to diseases brought by the European colonizers. Diseases like smallpox, measles, and influenza, to which the indigenous people had no immunity, decimated their populations. This demographic collapse necessitated an alternative labor source for the Spanish colonies. Faced with the population decline of the indigenous labor force, the Spanish turned to Africa to meet their growing labor demands. The first enslaved Africans were brought to the Americas by Spanish conquistadors in the early 16th century, marking the initiation of the African slave trade. The establishment of Spanish colonies in the Americas was intrinsically linked to the institution of slavery. The demand for labor to cultivate cash crops such as sugarcane, tobacco, and cotton led to the massive influx of African slaves. Slavery became an integral part of the labor force in the Caribbean and South America, and the conditions endured by enslaved Africans were often deplorable. The Caribbean was a hub for Spanish colonial agriculture. Large-scale plantations emerged, focusing on the cultivation of sugarcane. These plantations required a substantial labor force, and Africans were brought in as slaves to work under brutal conditions in the sugarcane fields. The transatlantic journey that enslaved Africans endured, known as the Middle Passage, was a harrowing experience. Packed into overcrowded, disease-ridden ships, Africans faced severe mistreatment, hunger, and disease. The mortality rate during the Middle Passage was alarmingly high, with countless lives lost at sea. The African slave trade had a profound impact on Spain's economy during the 16th and 17th centuries. The enormous wealth derived from the New World, coupled with the profits from the slave trade, contributed significantly to the economic ascendancy of the Spanish Empire. The American colonies yielded vast quantities of precious metals, particularly gold and silver, which were extracted through the labor of enslaved Africans. This wealth influx from the New World was often referred to as the bullion, and it contributed to the flourishing Spanish economy during this period. It is essential to recognize the I saw war.
So, like I said, a lot of people not focusing on that and don't really know the history, but
transported across the Atlantic.
Spain.
The conditions they faced were brutal and inhumane, and this suffering left a lasting scar on the collective memory of African descendants. Enslaved Africans toiled in grueling conditions, subjected to long hours of labor in the sweltering heat of the Caribbean and the Southern American colonies. They were often provided with meager rations, and medical care for the sick and injured was woefully inadequate. The forced migration of Africans to the New World led to the rupture of cultural ties and the loss of ancestral traditions. Enslaved Africans were forcibly separated from their families, tribes, and homelands, resulting in profound cultural dislocation. Laws to govern African slaves. The treatment of slaves in Spanish colonies was governed by a complex legal framework that evolved over time, reflecting the changing attitudes of the colonial administration and society as a whole. While there were variations in laws and policies across different regions and eras, several common themes characterized Spain's treatment of slaves. The laws of the Indies, known as Las Leyes de Indias in Spanish, were a comprehensive set of legal regulations that governed Spain's American colonies. These laws were first promulgated in the early 16th century, notably during the reign of Charles V, and were continually updated and refined. While they included provisions aimed at protecting the welfare of indigenous peoples and enslaved Africans, Their primary function was to serve the interests of the colonial elite. The laws of the Indies were primarily designed to maintain Spanish control over colonial territories and the wealth generated therein. They established the structure of governance, delineated the rights and responsibilities of different social groups, and provided guidelines for the administration of justice. The laws did contain certain protections for enslaved Africans. For instance, they stipulated that enslaved individuals could not be separated from their families. Additionally, they acknowledged that enslaved people had the right to marry, albeit within the constraints of a system that still regarded them as property. One of the significant shortcomings of the laws of the Indies was the lack of effective enforcement. In many cases, local authorities turned a blind eye to violations of these regulations, allowing the exploitation and mistreatment of enslaved people to continue with relative impunity. Manumission, or the process of freeing enslaved individuals, was permitted by Spanish law. However, this process was subject to numerous conditions and restrictions, making it exceedingly difficult for enslaved people to gain their freedom. One of the most significant obstacles to manumission was the requirement for enslaved individuals to pay a substantial sum to secure their freedom. This payment could be prohibitively expensive, effectively preventing many enslaved people from ever being able to earn their freedom. Even if an enslaved person managed to accumulate the necessary funds, they still needed the consent of their owner to be freed. Owners often had little incentive to grant freedom, as it meant losing a source of labor. While the laws of the Indies included some protections for manumitted individuals, such as the right to own property, these protections were limited and subject to the whims of local authorities. Racial hierarchies. Spain, like other colonial powers, established a complex system of racial hierarchies in its American colonies. This system placed Europeans, or those of predominantly European descent, at the top of the social hierarchy, followed by mestizos, people of mixed European and indigenous heritage, mulattoes, people of mixed European and African heritage, and enslaved Africans. This hierarchical system served to reinforce social divisions and justify the mistreatment of enslaved individuals. The racial hierarchy was enshrined in law and had significant legal and social implications. It determined an individual's legal rights, social status, and access to opportunities. Enslaved individuals occupied the lowest rung of this hierarchy, facing extreme discrimination and limited access to basic rights. The racial hierarchy was not only a reflection of societal attitudes, but also a tool for maintaining social control. It justified the unequal treatment of communities. Often relied on subsistence farming and resourceful strategies for survival. They sought to be self-sufficient and avoid.
At Tractor Supply, you can still find the perfect.
The colonial system. Palenques were not merely places of refuge, but colonialism has had a profound impact on the political landscape of Equatorial Guinea. The country experienced decades of authoritarian rule and political instability after gaining independence in 1968. Notably, Francisco Macias Nguema's brutal dictatorship, which lasted until 1979, was marked by widespread human rights abuses and economic mismanagement. Spain's colonial venture in Equatorial Guinea, like many other European powers in Africa, was driven by economic interests. The exploitation of the region's resources played a central role in Spain's colonial enterprise. One of the key economic activities in Equatorial Guinea during the colonial period was the establishment of plantations, primarily for the cultivation of cocoa and coffee. These crops were highly sought after in the international market, and the profitability of the plantations depended on the forced labor of the local population. Indigenous Africans were subjected to coercive labor practices, working under brutal conditions on these plantations. Apart from plantations, Spain also engaged in resource extraction, exploiting the natural wealth of the region. Timber, rubber, and minerals were among the resources extracted for the benefit of the colonial power. These activities often resulted in ecological degradation and disruption of local ecosystems. The profits generated by these economic activities were not reinvested in the colonies, but were rather largely repatriated to Spain.
Okay, so notice how they do this. You have to keep an eye out for it. It's in Spain. So that's covering over Esau. from a biblical perspective. You never wouldn't even tie this to the Bible, but when you understand who it is that's in Spain, that's behind all this, then you start to make more sense. Okay. Any comments?
Shalom. We take it back to Daniel with Antiochus and how he went to killing all the Jews and trying to kill all the Jews and and take over all the territory, and Daniel was telling him about the visions and the dreams and how those four beasts were going to be doing things.
Yeah, right, exactly. But like I said, they didn't subvert it by these names they're using, and you're not putting together who's who, and you're not able to see scripture actually unfolding in front of your face. But they're giving us these names that don't have no bearing on prophecy.
Right, no meaning, because they're not going to say Great Britain and Prince Charles and
Right,
all the other ones that are really doing what they're doing.
exactly. Who they are.
Right, exactly.
Right. Anybody else? Okay, we're gonna open it up for some Q&A. Anybody got any questions or comments about anything from last night or over the weekend for the Shabbat last week? More questions, comments?
Well, I have something from like um, chapter 26 when it talks about pretty much like the roles of the women and how the Hebrew Israelite woman should be. Well, it's not really a question. It's like I'm just making a out of the Apocrypha.
Okay. Sirach?
Uh,
Oh,
Sirach, yeah,
yeah.
Sirach, yeah. So with that, it gives a real good layout on what the expectancy is, and and how this thing, when you go from 25 to 26, it's the woman, then when you hit 27 it's the man, but when you put them all together it's like it's like a even flow. It's like it should be. You don't have the questions, you don't have the backbiting, you don't have the doubt, because if we look at what the roles are, then it would just still jive, because like some people say, well, if I'm with this guy and he not in this Hebrew and he's not doing this, then that's not the one you're supposed to be with, because the one you're going to be with is going to know what to do, and you're going to know what to do, and you're going to know your place and they're going to know their place. And it shouldn't be a fight, shouldn't be a struggle, because the eye on the prize is the Lord of hosts. And and then from there we build to the prophecy of David coming back, and everything to be like it's supposed to be. So with that, it was 25 and 26 and 27 is really good chapters.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, it's in detail, pretty much telling you, or you can actually look at our culture when you read that, because it's pretty specific on how the order was.
Right. It is really specific on every detail.
Right. Okay. Anybody else have anything? Okay. Everybody good? So yeah, this right here, you hear me talking about this a lot. But I think this guy kind of hit it on the nail, and this is where we so discombobulated there because of so many people don't understand this and don't understand the ramifications of it and how severe it is. But I'm gonna play it. It's the name of the video is Zionism grip on African liberation. Let's check it out.
Palestine since October 7th, Palestinian people have continued to fight back, and their resistance has been controversial and intolerable to many people. That is especially the case with the favorite tools of the ruling class: media pundits, politicians, and celebrities. These people make up what some like to call a leadership class, those so-called leaders who are shoved in our
Black
faces
leaders.
as people
Black
to
leaders.
follow, but have genuinely nowhere to take us. These African misleaders who support Israel have become more and more visible.
Hamas must be disbanded and destroyed immediately.
Eric Adams, let that firm out.
And lots of people I know are confused about that. Like, what are you doing, LeBron James? The American Israel Public Affairs Committee, or AIPAC, the most influential pro-Israel lobbying group in the U.S., has greased the palms of Black Congress members with around $3.6 million since February 2022. They have also historically targeted Black candidates and elected officials who won't fall in line to support Israel. So it should come as no surprise.
Like I was saying, nobody look at these people comments. You can see that they don't have nothing whatsoever to do with us or no concern about us as Israelites.
Here's a quick
They were
history.
chosen by these folks.
It's 1920, and there's a man named Chaim
Check this out.
Weizmann who's just taken over as president of the World Zionist Organization. If that sounds familiar to you, it's because it's the name of the organization founded by Theodor Herzl, the founder of Zionism, a political ideology that has tried to hijack Judaism for imperialist causes. Quick disclaimer: not all Jews are Zionists, not all Zionists are Jews. Word to y'all boy Biden.
You need not be a Jew to be a Zionist.
Anyway, Weizmann comes into the leadership of the org.
Okay, stop it right there for a minute. Anybody understand that?
Can you go back to? I understand the part about the Black leaders and the people greasing these celebrity palms, with those millions of dollars, and they have nothing to do it. But the name of that person he mentioned, was it Himes?
It's Theodore Herzl. That's the guy. I mean, that's the guy we're doing time with Hitler, doing Germans. He's the one started this thing about Israel, but so-called nation Israel coming back to the land of over in Palestine. He the one kicked all that off. But the point I was asking about was, did anybody understand what Zionist is, what a Zionist is, and let's check it out what he said. There you go.
Not all Jews are Zionists. Not all Zionists are Jews.
So not all Jews are Zionists, and not all Zionists are Jews. Okay.
Word to y'all boy Biden.
You need not be a Jew to be a Zionist.
Anyway, Weizmann comes.
So you understand that? Anybody understand that?
Yeah, I understand it now.
Right, a Zionist is somebody that wants the nation of Israel back over the land of Palestine.
Right.
To rule. That's what a Zionist is. So it's not all about Edomites, that's what the Jews are, Edomites.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these people like that they didn't got, like this guy, what his name, the black guy, he's some kind of correspondent for I think it's not Fox News, it's the other one. Maybe Fox News. Bald-head guy, I can't think his name, but all those people, they participating in this Israel, nation Israel, over in the land of Israel, they support it. Just like this last incident with Hamas, 300 black folks. famous, influential black folks, they supporting Israel. With all this information that's coming across the internet, they supporting Israel. You wonder why we're in the predicament we're in.
Okay.
Into the leadership.
So check this out, though. I was telling you about the black Edomites created the black priest, the black pastor.
In the United States, he thought it would be valuable to seek out the support of African people in the U.S. and was connected easily to the Black church by Stephen Wise, a popular U.S. rabbi who later went on to become one of the founders of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People.
Jews discovered that NAACP.
The NAACP. Wiseman came up with the idea of going on a tour of Black churches, and it was set up with the support of Wise and a combination of individuals and organizations. His goal was to garner public support for the establishment of a Jewish nation. During his time in the U.S., arrangements were made for Wiseman to meet a number of prominent leaders and other African clergy. At the time, it was really easy to exploit the idea baked into the word Zion, especially among African followers of the Bible. And that's because in the U.S. at the time, you had millions of Africans whose ancestors had been stolen from Africa, forced into slavery, only to fight their way out and find themselves in a living hell. Jim Crow, widespread lynching, straight up apartheid. Unfortunately, it was too easy to convince a lot of Africans in the U.S. that their idea of returning home and the Zionist idea of returning home were the same. A lot of our heroes fell for this political trickery.
Exactly.
In 1948,
check it out.
W.E.B. Du Bois wrote an entire address to the American Jewish
W.E. Du Bois.
America's Responsibility to Israel. Though I have to point out that he later revised his position on this. And in many cases, Zionists were also able to twist the words and sentiments of such figures after they died to associate their causes with Zionism. By the 1950s, the civil rights movement was in full swing in the United States, and the Zionist cause found some support in the movement's biggest star, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. The SCLC was a predominantly Christian organization that employed nonviolent direct action strategies in the struggle for civil rights for Africans in the United States. And out of the SCLC grew a call for a new student-led initiative, one whose youthful vibrance and impatience with the status quo would come to evolve the ideology of the U.S. civil rights movement and buck up against the way the entire country talked about Zionism. Thus was born SNCC, short for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which was formed by young activists, including now prominent figures like Ella Baker, Diane Nash, and Julie Vaughn. SNCC began in 1960 as a political organization, mostly focused on acquiring voting and civil rights for Africans in the U.S. But by 1967, their ideology had begun to adopt anti-capitalism and anti-imperialism. This was largely due to a growing internationalist and Pan-Africanist outlook among its members. Members like a woman named Ethel Minor. As a journalist, she quickly became the editor of the SNCC newsletter in the summer of 1967. This was a crucial turning point in the Zionist occupation of Palestine.
So they're bringing these niggas on the scene, Negroes, they're looking like us, but they ain't. They eat the Jews. Their fathers are Jews. They bring them on the scene. So what they done with her, they did the same thing with Obama. They bring them on the scene. They didn't prepare them, and then they bring them on the scene and throw us in a tailspin.
Yeah, and you could relate the New Testament JC with the Zion of the African slavery. When they opened churches, it was New Zion, Zion Baptist, Zion, whatever. The trickery.
They've been doing it forever.
Right.
They've been doing this forever. Over and over again. We ain't figured it out yet. Okay? That's all.
Yes, sir. Because when Malcolm wanted to let everybody in on what they were doing with Martin, you know, trying to bring together to actually keep like a field force of protection, pretty much, you know, then they wanted to kill him right away.
Right. Exactly. You say something?
Yes,
World
sir.
witnessed the 6-Day War. That's when, over the course of 6 days, Israel captured territories from its neighbors, including the Sinai Peninsula, the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Golden Heights. In the midst of this, staffers at the Snake newsletter decided the organization had a responsibility to speak out. As editor, Ethel Miner oversaw a rich print feature, including an objective critique.
These Negroes to further their cause. Who would ever knew that this SNCC organization tied to NAACP and all that was tied to Israel, 6-Day War and all that? Come on.
Critique of the facts, and an interactive game for Africans in the U.S. to test their knowledge of the Zionist occupation. The ending of her letter from the editor read as follows.
Since we know that the white American press seldom, if ever, gives the true story about world events in which America is involved, then we are taking this opportunity to present the following documented facts on this problem. These facts not only affect the lives of our brothers in the Middle East, Africa, and Asia, but also pertain to our struggle here.
The day these papers hit the streets was incredibly significant because SNCC had officially posed a formidable challenge to the line on Israel held by the establishment of the U.S. Civil Rights Movement. And they pissed a lot of Zionists off too, like a lot. While it is true that many Jewish organizations in the U.S. financially supported the Civil Rights Movement, so did many Zionist organizations. And with SNCC's loud rebuke of Zionism came an even louder snatch of background checks. Critics accused the language and graphics of the paper of being anti-Semitic, a common Zionist deflection tactic. They were slammed in the press as a Negro extremist group. Theodore Biko, a popular U.S. singer and actor who claimed to be in solidarity with the Civil Rights Movement, wrote a whole hit piece called A Farewell to SNCC, where he denounced the young organization and rubbed MLK all in their faces. And unfortunately, when asked for comment on the SNCC newsletter, MLK himself hit them back. This is how Kwame Ture remembers it.
Any attack on Israel is a quote. Any attack on Israel, no matter how you camouflage it, is an attack on Semitism, is anti-Semitic. Paul King was confused.
The backlash against SNCC was swift and brutal. Kwame Ture, who was the acting chairman of SNCC at the time Miner issued the newsletter, said in 1988, once we attacked the state of Israel, SNCC was closed down in 3 months. Not only did the media go on attack, but the liberals, non-Jewish liberals, were jumping over each other to attack us. Though SNCC ultimately met its end, their anti-Zionist contribution to the U.S. freedom struggle birthed many formations. It was the bedrock of the anti-Zionist analysis of the Black Power movement in the United States, from the Black Panther Party to the Revolutionary Action Movement to the Republic of New Africa and the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. But it also spurred reactionary formations, like the Black Americans Support Israel Committee, or BASIC. Yes, right. BASIC. It was founded in 1975 by civil rights figures like A. Philip Randolph and Bayard Rustin.
Come on.
According to both of them, BASIC was designed to fight back against the efforts of newly independent African states that were trying to expel Israel from the United Nations, or at least condemn the Zionist state. Over the course of history, our consciousness of the Zionist occupation of Israel has evolved. But in many ways, we can still see how Zionism attempts to obscure our worldview. For young African people in the U.S. today, it's our responsibility to remember our people's path of radical solidarity against Zionism in the United States.
Okay, so you want to check that out. It's a Zionism grip on African liberation. Okay, any comments on it? Back got any comments before we go into our discussion? Okay. So yeah, as like I said earlier, I was going to be reading out of Leviticus. I'll be reading chapter 4 and 5. Is dealing with burnt offerings and the process and the reason being why they doing it. So I'm in Leviticus chapter 4. Okay, so it says law of sin offering, right? It says, and the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, saying, notice who talk, the Lord. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, saying, if a soul shall sin through ignorance against any of the commandments of the Lord concerning things which ought not be done, and shall do against any of them, if the priest that is anointed do sin according to the sin of the people, then let him bring forth the sin which he have sinned, a young bullock without blemish, unto the Lord for a sin offering. And he shall bring the bullock unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation before the Lord, and he shall slay his hand. He shall lay his hand upon the bullock's head and kill the bullock before the Lord. And the priest that is anointed shall take of the bullock's blood and bring it to the tabernacle of the congregation. And the priest shall dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle of the blood 7 times before the Lord, before the veil of the sanctuary. And the priest shall put some of the blood upon the horns of the altar of sweet incense before the Lord, which is in the tabernacle of the congregation. And he shall pour out all the blood of the bullock at the bottom of the altar of the burnt offering, which is at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. So let's go back and look at this. So he says, verse 2, speaking to the children of Israel, saying, if a soul, with a male or female in Israel, Israelite, shall sin. We're going to see how it's tied to JC, right? If a soul shall sin through ignorance against any of the commandments of the Lord concerning these things which ought not be done, and shall do against any of them, then here you go. 3, if the priest that is anointed do sin according to the sin of the people, then let him bring forth his sin. So the priest sinned, which he have seen, a young bullock without blemish unto the Lord for a sin offering. So notice, you gotta look at this, you gotta see this. This is the Lord spake unto Moses in verse 1. So he right there talking to Moses in the tabernacle. So he there. Now notice verse 3. If the priest that sin is anointed do sin according to the sin of the people, then look at this. Let him bring forth his sin, which he has seen, a young bullock without blemish unto the Lord. We got to bring it to the Lord. He there. That's the reason why we're in the predicament we in now that we in. He ain't here. We don't know the ramifications and extent of what was going on in our culture back then. He was there. They were dealing with him. So he says, bring unto the Lord for a sin offering, and he shall bring the bullock unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. So he has to come, he in there, along with the priest. So it says, congregation before the Lord, and he shall lay his hand upon the bullock's head, kill the bullock before the Lord. See that? And the priest that is anointed shall take the bullock's blood. You got the blood that now all of a sudden you need JC blood. But I want to show you this right here. The priest that is anointed shall take the bullock blood, bring it to the tabernacle of the congregation, right? They go to dagger. Verse 6. And the priest shall dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle the blood 7 times before the Lord, before the vow of the sanctuary. So why you think you got to do it 7 times?
7 holy angels.
There you go. There it is right there. When Abraham made the covenant with Amalek at the well, he said, get 7 huge lambs as a witness. Why 7? 7 angels there. We read that because they didn't obscure our understanding. We don't know nothing about the 7 angels because you didn't denigrate the book of Enoch, but it's right here in your face. But we can't see none of it because we've been tricked off. Then verse 7 says, and the priest shall put some of the blood upon the horns of the altar of the sweet incense before the Lord. See that? Keep saying before the Lord, which is in the tabernacle of the congregation, and he shall pour all the blood of the bullock at the bottom of the altar of the burnt offering, which is at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. So my thing is, like I keep saying over and over again, now you see why we don't have no herds, why we don't have none of these animals, because we've been cut off. That's why we don't have them. We need them to deal with him. We need these animals. Not no man's blood. So 8, and he shall take off from it all the fat of the bullock for the sin offering, for the fat that covers the inwards, and all the fat that is upon the inwards, and the 2 kidneys, and the fat that is upon them, which is by the flank, and the caul above the liver, with the kidneys, it shall he take away, as it was taken off from the bullock of the sacrifice for the peace offering, and the priest shall burn them upon the altar of the burnt offering, and the skin of the bullock, and all his flesh, with his head, and with his legs, and his inwards, and his dung, even the whole bullock shall be carried forth without the camp into a clean place, where the ashes are poured out, and burn him on the wood with fire, where the ashes are poured out, shall he be burnt. Okay, so now we go to laws made for the congregation. So go back to what all through the Psalms. You keep hearing David saying, I'm gonna praise you in the great congregation. So it's the great congregation, it's 3 of them, those 3 high holy days. That's what David's talking about. And we know the Lord is there from rightly dividing these scriptures, reading it. He's there. So that's what David's talking about. When you see holy days, when I come in the temple where you at, I'm gonna be praising you. I'm gonna be doing the most. 3 times that he know he's gonna see him. So 13 says, and if the whole congregation, check it out, if the whole congregation of Israel sin through ignorance, the whole congregation, just now he's looking at if one person sinned in ignorance. He said, if the whole congregation of Israel sin through ignorance, and the thing be hid from the eyes of the assembly, and they have done somewhat against any of the commandments of the Lord concerning things which should not be done, and are guilty. When the sin which they have sinned against it is known, then the congregation shall offer a young bullock for the sin, and bring him before the tabernacle of the congregation. And the elders of the congregation shall lay up their hands upon the head of the bullock before the Lord, and the bullock shall be killed before the Lord. And the priest that is anointed shall bring the bullock blood to the tabernacle of the congregation, and the priest shall dip his finger in some of the blood and sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord, even before the veil. And he shall put some of the blood upon the horns of the altar, which is before the Lord, and and that is the tabernacle of the congregation, and shall pour out all the blood at the bottom of the altar of the burnt offering, which is at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And he shall take all his fat from him and burn it upon the altar. And he shall do with the bullock as he had did with the bullock for the sin offering, so that he do with this, and the priest shall make an atonement for them, and it shall be forgiven them. And he shall carry forth the bullock without account, burn him as he had burned the first bullock, and it is a sin offering for the congregation, that all Israel. And when a ruler have sinned and done somewhat through ignorance against any of the commandments of the Lord his God concerning things which should not be done, and is guilty, or if his sin wherein he has sinned come to his knowledge, he shall bring his offering, a kid of the goats, or a male without blemish, and he shall lay his hand upon the head of the goat, kill it in the place where they kill the burnt offering before the Lord. It is a sin offering. And the priest shall take of the blood of the sin offering with his finger, put it upon the horn of the altar of burnt offering, and he shall pour out his blood at the bottom of the altar of the burnt offering. And he shall burn all his fat upon the altar, and the fat of the sacrifice of peace offering, and the priest shall make an atonement for him as concerning his sin, and it shall be forgiven. And if any of this, and if any of the common people sin through ignorance, while he doeth somewhat against any of the commandments of the Lord concerning the thing which ought not be done, and be guilty, or if his sin which he has sinned come to his knowledge, then he shall bring his offering, a kid of goats, a female without blemish, for his sin which he have sinned, and he shall lay his hand upon the head of the sin offering, and slay the sin offering in the place of the burnt offering. And the priest shall take of the blood thereof with his finger, put it upon the horns of the altar of burnt offerings, and shall pour out all the blood thereof at the bottom of the altar. And he shall take away all the fat thereof, as the fat is taken away from off the sacrifice of the peace offering. And the priest shall burn it upon the altar for a sweet savor unto the Lord. And the priest shall make an atonement for him, and it shall be given him. And if he bring the lamb for a sin offering, he shall bring it a female without blemish. And he shall lay his hand upon the head of the sin offering, slay it for a sin offering in the place where they had killed the burnt offering. And the priest shall take of the blood of the sin offering with his finger, and put it upon the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and he shall pour out all the blood thereof at the bottom of the altar. And he shall take away all the fat thereof, as the fat of the lamb is taken away from the sacrifice of the peace offering. And the priest shall burn them upon the altar, according to the offering made by fire unto the Lord. And the priest shall make an atonement for his sin that he hath committed, and he shall be forgiven him. So that was my point. If you look over here in 26, notice that this process they doing, when you get to verse 26, he shall burn all his fat upon the altar as the fat of the sacrifice of the peace offering, and the priest shall make an atonement. Check it out. The priest shall make an atonement, right, for him as concerning his sin, and it shall be forgiven him. So sin done away with. There ain't no, these animals ain't being sacrificed to cover no sin, like they want to say, to set up JC, cover the sin, and they saying that these sin offerings, these offerings right here was, they was temporary. They wasn't really covering. They just temporary thing till the Messiah came, pointing toward the Messiah. But he says right here, 26, and he shall burn all the fat upon the altar, this whole process, as the fat of the sacrifice of the peace offering, and the priest Notice that people, everybody got a role, just like the angels got a role. These priests got a role. So you can have a musician here doing this. That ain't his role. His role is in the temple, singing in the temple. Just like I said, you can't. He said a lamb. You can't bring a goat or pig or hyena. You got to have a lamb. It's an order to it. So he says, 26, and he shall burn all his fat upon the altar as the fat of the upon the altar, and the fat of the sacrifice of the peace offering, and the priest shall make an atonement for him concerning his sin. See that? Sin. And it shall be forgiven him. Don't say it ain't covering nothing. He taking it away. The same way he done in Zechariah chapter 3 with Joshua. Caused the sin to pass away from him. And then we see it again in 35. He shall take away, you go through the whole process. He shall take away all the fat thereof, as the fat of the lamb is taken away from the sacrifice of the peace offering. And the priest shall burn them upon the altar, according to the offering made by fire upon the unto the Lord. And the priest shall make an atonement for his sin that he has committed, and he shall be forgiven him. I mean, done away with, pass away. There ain't no covering, no sin. It's done away with. Okay, any comments? That was chapter 5. 4.
Yes, sir. Sure. So in 22, when it talks of a ruler, are they talking like kings or the government people? Which ruler?
He's talking about the over the, you got a man over each. It's a prince over each tribe, 12 prince.
Okay.
And then you got the king, and you got the 12 princes. He's got a prince over every tribe that's ruling over that tribe.
Okay.
Right. And so we talked about that before when it comes to the temple, like he was saying about the great congregation. It's like I can't remember where it was at, but it was something like 35,000 people that run the temple every month. That's one, this prince right here that we talk about, these rulers each year, each month, the ruler from each tribe, each one of those 12 tribes, they have to take care of all the daily things that go on in the temple. And then they leave out at the end of the month, and the ruler over that tribe comes in, the prince, and they do what they have to do for 12 for that month. Then the other one come in, is 12 of them, one for every tribe, which is for every month.
Okay. Yes, sir.
All right. Anybody else?
Shalom. As you were reading that chapter, Brother Leonard, I was thinking about the order. Everything that the Lord is involved in, there's an order. Even, from the beginning with the creation, the natural laws, relationship, guidelines for worship, so forth, there's always an order there that is in place no matter what it is.
Right.
Reading that, I was, just thinking about, we always say there's an order, to only certain things, but there's an order to everything that the Lord does, even from the beginning of creation.
Right. And we see that in his creation. Ain't no gaps, because if it's a gap, then it's gonna throw off his creation.
Right.
Like I said, the trees need nitrogen, and we need oxygen. You think that's a coincidence?
No, sir.
We need water, and the rain, and we need water, and everything. There's no gap. Everything is flowing. It's one cause and effect in everything. Just like the priests, if they wicked as hell, then they're gonna turn the whole nation wicked. If they righteous, then the whole nation is righteous.
Right.
So everybody got a role.
Yes. And as Sister Joyce was talking about in C-Rock, right, for chapter 26, so you got to look at that too. You know, it's an ordering that when it comes to, you know, the guidelines for worship as you were reading, conduct,
Right.
relationships, you know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Right. And if you causing all kind of problems and havoc if you're not participating your part of the situation. You're causing
right.
problems.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That's an alignment with the Lord. Yes.
Like I was saying, just imagine if the trees stop putting out oxygen. We'll be in trouble.
Yes, sir.
That's all.
Yes, sir.
Stop raining. Okay, yeah. So I'm in chapter 5. I'm gonna read this. It's 19 verses. It says, and if a soul and hear the voice of the swearing and is a witness whether he have seen or known of it, if he do not utter it, then he shall bear his iniquity. Or if a soul touch in any unclean thing, whether it be a carcass of an unclean beast, or the carcass of an unclean cattle, or the carcass of an unclean creeping thing, and if it be hidden from him, he also shall be unclean and guilty. Or if he touches the uncleanness of a man, whatever uncleanness it be, that a man shall be defiled with it, and it be hid from him when he knoweth of it, then he shall be guilty. Or if a soul swear pronouncing with his lips to do evil or to do good, whether it be that a man shall pronounce with an oath, and it be hid from him when he knoweth of it, then he shall be guilty in one of these. And it shall be when he shall be guilty in one of these things, that he shall confess that he hath sinned in that thing, and he shall bring his trespass offering unto the Lord for his sin, which he has seen, a female from the flock, a lamb or a kid of the goats for a sin offering, and the priest shall make an atonement for him concerning his sin. And if he be not able to bring a lamb, then he shall bring his trespass with which he have committed 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons unto the Lord, one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. And he shall bring them unto the priest, who shall offer that which is for a sin offering first, and wring off his head from his neck, but he shall not divide asunder. And he shall sprinkle of the blood of the sin offering upon the side of the altar, and the rest of the blood shall he wring out at the bottom of the altar, and it is the sin offering. And he shall offer the second of the burnt offering according to the manner, and the priest shall make an atonement for him for his sin which he have seen, and it shall be forgiven him. But if he be not able to bring 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, then he has sinned, then his sin shall bring his offering, the 10th part of an ephod of fine flour for the sin offering, and he shall put no oil upon it, neither shall he put any frankincense therein, for it is a sin offering. Then shall he bring it to the priest, and the priest shall take the handful of it, even a memorial thereof, burn it on the altar, according to the offering made by fire unto the Lord. It is a sin offering. And the priest shall make an atonement for him as touching his sin that he hath sinned in one of these, and it shall be forgiven him, and the remnant shall be the priest's as a meat offering. Okay. Then the law of trespass offering. The Lord shall speak unto Moses, the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, if a soul commit a trespass and sin through ignorance in the holy, in the holy things of the Lord, then he shall bring forth his trespass unto the Lord, a ram without blemish out of the flock, with the estimation by a shekel of silver, after the shekel of the sanctuary, for a trespass offering. And he shall make amends for the harm that he have done in the holy things, and he shall add the fifth part thereof, and give it unto the priest, and the priest shall make an atonement for him with the ram of the trespass offering, and it shall be forgiven him. And if a soul sin and committed any of these things which are forbidden to be done by the commandments of the Lord, though he wish it not, yet is he guilty, and he shall bear his iniquity, and he shall bring a ram without blemish out of the flock, with thy estimation, for the trespass offering unto the priest, and the priest shall make an atonement for him concerning the ignorance wherewith he erred, and was it not, and it shall be forgiven him. Is a trespass offering. He have certainly trespassed against the Lord. So that was chapter 5. Anybody have a comment?
Shalom. So in verse 15, where it says, if a soul, so it is gotten down to, with the order, the individual.
Right.
Okay.
Was it male or female?
Yes, sir. Okay.
Okay. Anybody else got anything before we close out? Everybody good?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. So I got a VA appointment tomorrow, and I think it said 4:30. So I don't think I'll be back. But by the time, because it's an hour and some drive, so then if something else come up, I'll be on there. But if I'm not on there, it's because I got a VA appointment. Okay.
Understandable. Yes, sir.
Right. So with that being said, you don't say shalom to everybody, and if I don't see you tomorrow, I'll see everybody on Friday for the clubhouse room. Shalom.
Shalom, everyone.
Okay.